I used to attend Sparkhill Church of God of Prophecy Church. My brothers, Trevor and Glenn, used to play music, and occasionally Lesburn Easie would come down, if I remember correctly, and play at church. We'd have like revivals or things like that.
Trevor and Glenn, I've known them all my life. Don't recall ever meeting them. As far as I was concerned, they were my brothers. I had a brother who was living in Jamaica at the time, and never met him till he came to England when he was about 14. I would have been about 9. So Trevor and Glenn Prince were my brothers. I remember being at school one day, just started Tyndall Street Junior School, and this little boy came up to me and he said, "You got brother?" I said, "No, I got no brother." He started fighting me. And he stopped. So when I caught out what was going on, we just started chasing him. I chased him. I wanted to give him what for, but I couldn't because he stood between his 2 brothers.
Yeah.
And when I look up, there was like 2 tree trunk. And so I was mad and I was crying. So I walked away and I saw Glenn. So Glenn came to me and said, "What you crying for? What you crying for?" I said, "I'm the way I did tell me about him, about my brother and all these kind of things before. No, you start fighting." He said, "Stop it." He said, "If them ever ask," it was a trick at the time. That's what they used to do. If you had no family, they'd fight you.
Yeah.
So he said,
"Is it a white boy or a black boy?"
White boy.
Okay.
So he said, "Tell him, say, yeah, brother here, Trevor and Glenn." I'm from that. So my mom used to babysit them when they were young boys. So as far as I was concerned, Trevor and Glenn were my brothers. Yeah. So I was fortunate to have 2 musical influences, one from the Willams family from my local church, and then Trevor and Glenn later on. So what was unique about our church, the church we were going to, we call it George Street now, it was Tyndall Street then. We were one of the first churches to have a full band, because most churches, they only had like a guitarist, or they may have a piano player or something like that, but we had bass, drum, and rhythm guitar.
Memories, or clearer memories, is when my brothers, Trevor, Glenn, and Lesburn used to practice for Shiloh Band at George Street, which was literally behind where we used to live in Highgate, which was Homer Street, 57 Homer Street. So I would go with Glenn to practice because Mum says, "You must take Ray with you." So I would go, and I'd be in awe because I'd watch Lesburn setting up his drums, and Trevor and Glenn would be playing. So regularly I would go to practices, and then occasionally I would go to concerts that Shiloh Band was playing at.
And Shiloh Band was a great ground for us as musicians as well as gospel musicians, because I learned a lot from Trevor. I mean, he was a great friend, and his sound, the classic Trevor Prince chorus sound, nobody else had that sound. He was the first guy I remember that brought the chorus pedal in, and it's like, why does his guitar sound like that? It's like everybody's looking and seeing what's Trevor got on the floor there. Pedals, man, pedals. Trevor had his pedals, he had his sound together. And that's where we learned, you know, he was a giving guy. He always used to sit down, talk about how you set up your guitar, what sounds you get, how you set up your amps, what sounds you get from this. Great guy to talk to, and a great influence as well.
Like Trevor, I grew up with Trevor, my brother, and we learned together. If Trevor learned a new lick, he'd go, listen to this, you know, and I'd do the bass line to it, and that's how we're done. We was in church playing. We didn't even have to look at each other. I occasionally I'd glance over and I'd see a smile, and he was all right with that. Yes, I know I'm doing all right, you know what I mean? And we think along the same way. Then we done Shiloh Band came in, and we tried to get it right, because I always remember years ago somebody coming to watch Spiritual Rhythm. It could have been this guy, because they wanted to take it up further, and they says, "You're all good musicians, but you're not playing together." Do you know what I mean? I always remembered that. So you need to play together. So our motto for Shiloh Band was simple but effective.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So give room for another musician to play. That's right. So it all fits as one. Yes.
And then in 1979 they did a concert at Digbeth Civic Hall. The vocalist at the time was Jennifer Beasley, and that's when I think the penny dropped for me. Mistakenly, I was in Trevor's car. He went to pick up his guitar that he had made by John Diggins. And for those who probably remember, he had the scepter, star and crown, the church flag on the guitar. It was a Yamaha kind of copy. It was a great guitar, it was. And when he went to pick it up, I was in the car. He left me in his car. I think he had a Cortina Mark 3, Mark 2 or Mark 3 back then. And he left some music and I was just playing on the headrest. And he's come in the car and he said, "What are you doing?" And I stopped. And I froze. He said, "What was you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I was just playing, just tapping the headrest." He said, "Was ya? Do it again." So I did it again. Sorry, Raj. Do you know what he did? Do you know what he did?
Yeah.
He bought some congos and he asked me to play at his concert in 1979. I was 8. And there's a picture of me playing. And that was my first ever performance, and that was because of Trevor.
I remember meeting One Accord, Rose Miller and Eileen Wheeler from Nottingham as it was then, and meeting a guy called, what was his name? I think his name was Albert, his name was, from Bristol, I think, a great guitarist. And again, just watching him in a camp setting and listening to him play, again, just really inspired me. So again, you will see pictures of me with a guitar in youth camp in 1977 as a 17-year-old. And meeting One Accord, as they were a group of girls from Nottingham. If you can imagine, say, I don't know, the Supremes or even the 3 Degrees. They reminded me of them in terms of their approach to music and singing. I don't even think the Clark sisters were around then at that time, but that's how I remembered them. And I met them at youth camp, and cut a long story short, they were rehearsing with a guy called Trevor Prince, Lesburn Easie, and Glenn Prince. And because I became friendly with them, lo and behold, they were rehearsing with the Princes and Lesburn in George Street Church over in Moseley. And I remember just riding, I was that enthused about music at the time, and I suppose I was hooked on One Accord as well as a female group. I remember riding my bicycle from Handsworth to Moseley to get to a rehearsal. And that's where I discovered a different style and quality of music. So there was Trevor on guitar, Glenn on bass, and Lesburn on drums. And again, just sitting in the room, and they would always ask me, "What am I doing there?" The guys would ask me, "What I'm doing there?" I says, I know Rose and I know Gillian and I know Eileen, so that's why I'm there. And they were just great musicians, and I was just glad to be just sitting there, just watching, not even thinking about playing, not even thinking about... and it was quite challenging in a way, because I'm from Handsworth, they're from Moseley. What am I even doing in the same space? But the one thing that we had in common was the music and the fact that we belonged to the same Church of God of Prophecy. So I think they tolerated me being in their rehearsal. And sooner or later we became friends. I think Trevor was quite warm in that sense. And we got talking and told him how I love guitar. And for those who know, Trevor at that time was an excellent guitarist. This is in the 70s. So there was like Trevor and Ozzy Willams. Those were the key or the main guitarists at the time. Just, again, they had the best equipment, best sound, clean sound, and they were just brilliant. And I think Trevor will say that he learned to play the guitar from Ozzy Willams, again, who I believe everybody remembers this brown Fender that Ozzy had and still has, and it's a classic Fender guitar, and that's where they started to learn and basically, you know, learn off each other and share stuff together.
With myself and Trevor, we were always competing. Who's got the best equipment? Who's got the best sound? He would phone me up, yo, you listen to this, you don't have this. What is it? Me nah tell you. You know, that sort of thing. It was terrible. And talking about Trevor, the first time Trevor and I met, he was playing and it was like, whoa, that guy can play. And I went up and I was playing and he come up to me and said, nah, man, what's your guitar? What guitar you have? At the time it was at Ibanez and Masters. It was like really, I had some job work done for the pickups. And Trevor said, no, man, that's really a good, nice. So I said, all right. And we built up a relationship and stuff. I trust him, he trusts me. And I wanted to do something with my guitar, the strings. I wanted to go lighter. So when you go lighter, you have to have it all set up and stuff like that. And the person that would normally do that for me had gone on holiday to Spain. So I was talking to Trevor and he said, nah, man, bring it round, I'll do it for you. I said, nah, you can't touch this guitar. He said, no, I'll do my own. And with that, I thought, yeah, because his guitar sounds, you know, top drawer. So I thought, go on then, yeah. Unknown to me. This is years after he owned up to me, telling me that, listen, you know, the blue guitar, he said, I stripped it. The man stripped my guitar. Look at what pickups I had. Look at the frets. Look at everything. So what happened now? I wasn't aware of all of this. So we went to a concert in West Brom and I finished playing and people going, wow, your guitar's cutting through, man, cutting through. Because back in the day, it was backline. All we had was backline to throw it forward. So my backline was, I made sure I had good amp, everything. And it was cutting through and I said, yes. And Trevor was there talking to say, yeah, follow that then now. And Trevor went, he got the same way he raised his eyebrow, so he's got something up his sleeve. So I looked and I said, pull out his straw. Anyway, I went outside to get myself a patty and a ginger beer, come back in. And I heard him playing and I thought, the guy's wrong, he's out of order. The guy's playing my guitar. I was so angry, because back in the day I was a bit of a wild one, you know what I mean? Fly off the angle quick. So I went up, marching up like this, and I looked at the guy playing his guitar. And he looked at me on the wings, and I thought, nah, how did you do that? What have you done? It was so funny. And he wouldn't let me know. It's good 10 years later, he owned up to it. So he cut a pair of my moves, man. But you know, people like Trevor, they were instrumental in how I sound and what I do. And even the way I approach music, especially for God, very professional. You know, I don't operate with this will do. I don't do that at all. You know, if I join a band and this will do business, I'm out the door.
It was Darren on bass, Trevor on guitar, rhythm guitar. I had the humbling position of playing lead guitar, trying to play like Josh, really. And we had another drummer and so forth, and another pianist as well. His name's gone right out of my head now, but he'll come back another day. But anyway, so working with him was such a wonderful experience. It was like, for me, it's almost like heaven on earth, because Trevor was not over complex. He would just play what was needed. Darren just played what was needed, and I just weaved in between, and he made me feel like $1 million. When I was playing bass, if Darren wasn't there, I'd play bass, and I remember Trevor saying to me, turn up your bass, turn up your bass. I'm going, I can't turn it up, I can't turn it up, I'm going to get in trouble, turn up your bass. He just knew what he needed to hear. Great guy. He had to have a mic in front of his amplifier, and that was it.
Trevor Prince was definitely an influence on my life. I think what happened, he probably was doing the PA, because he was running the PA, and he probably saw me playing, and then he approached me afterwards, and he said, oh, you know, he took my number. And then ever since then, anything he was doing, he would ask me to come and play. The hard part about it was that if he was doing the PA, we had to do all the grunt work and lift and carry boxes. But at the end of, and then we would do support, so we'd play. So it was me, Trevor, Ray was on drums, Glenn was on bass. So we were like a little unit. We also played for anybody that came to Aberdeen Street at the time, or support for anybody that came at the time. So I remember Donnie McClurkin, the Winans, Hezekiah Walker and his choir came over.
And I spent time with Trevor, and I'd bring my guitar and I'd ask him, you know, I'd play something and say, how would you play it? And he would bring a different dimension to the guitaring, less complex, but yet it just fitted what needed to be played. He used the term half chords. He said, you got your bass at the one end, you got your keyboards kind of doing these bits and bobs. So if you only play 2-3 strings, you don't need no more than that, and you just interweave, it fills out the music without it being cumbersome and overbearing. And I listened and learned some styles from him, because Hadley Hawkinsmith and I forgot the guy's name. He used to play for Chic and play for all these different. His name. I know you guys. Forgive me, brothers, for forgetting the brother's name. I can see him right now. But these were the guitarists that impacted him the most, and I started to take on some of those styles.
Because Trevor used to be a policeman. I was in a guitar shop, and I was just, as you do, that was my pastime. I used to love going into guitar and trying new guitars. And then what I'd say, when I was looking forward to buying a guitar, I had a Yamaha SG, which was a very expensive guitar. It was nearly $2,000. But when I started doing a more soul gigs, it wasn't the right guitar. So I was in the guitar shop trying out some Strats. And when I came back off this next tour, I was going to buy one. So I was just there, the guitar plugged in, and I was just there doodling and just practicing as you do. And then I just seen this big guy in uniform just run around the corner. And I says, who are you? And I says, oh, I'm Fuzz. And he goes, but I knew who he was. I said, Trevor, you're Trevor Prince? You're Trevor Prince? And he goes, yeah, but who are you? And I said, because when we used to go to the rehearsals, I used to talk to him and say, what does that do? And you know, and Compression just talked to him. So I was like a fan. And I said, you're Trevor Prince? And he goes, and from then, he says, oh, what? And from then, we just got, he took my number, and I took his number, and I used to phone him whenever he's going around. And that's how, to this day, I mean, up until he died, I was there for him, man, trust me. He used to work on my guitars. Whenever he used to get new pickups, he used to put them on my guitars for me. You know, any contraption he had, so he was just like he was the one who I would say influenced me the most. You know, all of them other guitarists, you know, George Benson, they were far away, but he had their sound. You know, you won't believe, he was such a mentor for me. You know, no one could get sounds like it was just like listening to them. You know, that's one thing where I can say I kind of fell down a bit, where I concentrated on playing and getting the thing. But I mean, my sound was all right, it was good. But, you know, Trevor was the man.
He made me feel valued, and he made me feel that I had something to contribute. So, Trevor Prince, nemesis. And when he left a big hole in my heart, I'll tell you that now.
You know, God rest his soul, Trevor was just truly amazing. So
Yes, he
three
really
great
was.
influences for me. Trevor Prince, definitely. Ozzy Williams, still in America now. And my childhood best friend, Wayne Williams, who started me on this musical journey and love for music, and still now.
With Trevor Prince, he brought me into Hazel Watson's band, and I cannot not mention her as one of the influence. She had a voice like silk, and she's a great loss. She would have been somebody in gospel now if she'd still been with us.
Greatest singer for me, Hazel Watson. Again, rest in peace. This girl had such a voice, but it weren't just her voice, it was her character. Not just her character, it was her knowledge of music. She's the same age as me, so by the time I was cutting it at 15 to 17, she was already cutting it. Her voice was amazing. Best singer, best influential person I know. I can't think of anyone. Hazel Watson, rest in peace.
in my time and in my era, the singers that was the ones that a lot of people were talking about and that I knew personally as well, Hazel Watson. Back in the day, I hope that people have not forgotten her. She was one of the icons of gospel music back in the day. So when we did Sisters in Christ, for example, it was Tracey Riggan from Divine, it was Hazel Watson, it was Jennifer Phillips, and it was myself. The four of us, we actually did a computers rule the world, but God is still in control. And I don't know where that video footage is today, but the four of us. My favourite singer, therefore, and she was really somebody that I looked up to aspire to be like, in terms of her voice and the silkiness of it, because we probably have the same vocal range as well, alto. We can do a bit of tenor if we want to, but alto voices, though I'm lazy because I can hit soprano, no problem. It was Hazel Watson back in the day in the Midlands. For me, that was my local person that I would like and I'd rate even to this day.
Hazel for me was like, she was the altos of all altos. And when she used to sing, because me, I always wanted to be a soprano until I heard Hazel Watson, and I thought,
stay alto.
Jeez, altos rock. Just as much as sopranos. After hearing Hazel, I thought, altos rock. And we became friends.
Yeah.
And it was just, for me, Hazel, she brought a lot of people together.
Yeah, she did.
She was an amazing individual, and a lot of us have stayed together.
I used to get on with the Watson family a lot, basically. And they used to ask me to come to a lot of their concerts, especially Aberdeen Street. I saw some folks there, Josh McCalla, Alvin, bass player and stuff. Them man's just like amazing, you know. And I saw the Aberdeen Street Choir, the Prophecy Choir and stuff, and I just saw what those guys were doing. And when I see other people, what they do, it resonated with me, you know, because everything in my local churches and in our weren't exactly up, not all the time up to par. So when I went out and I saw certain things, like, yeah, that kind of, you know, that kind of encourages me as well. So with Hazel and Joy and them especially, we used to do little things together. And what I noticed with them was, what impressed me was, and we all just done it. One could start a song and we just all harmonise without saying, oh, can you sing that? Can you sing that? It just happened, you know? And it was things like that that kind of encouraged what I had, and it kind of, you know, sometimes you stand out on your own when you're kind of in your little area, but when you see other people who are on the same level as you, and this is not to blow trumpets or anything, it's just a matter of fact, really. So Hazel had this big voice, a big alto or contralto voice, but she was a great singer. And you heard, I heard like the Hawkins, I heard the Clark sisters and stuff in when she sang and Joy sang as well. Joy was more the choir director, but Joy could sing as well. And she was just she was a very funny person. And when you think of Hazel at the time, it was always with a smile. She was either, my pictures of Hazel, she was either always laughing or smiling or singing, you know? And we just got on so well. We just got on really, really well.
I'm thinking of Hazel Watson.
Yeah.
That was she was a standout singer. Yeah.
Minister, actually.
Yeah, doing...
Joy.
And yes, I'm thinking of Joy in the choir.
Definitely Joy.
Yeah, Joy.
Yes.
Joy Watson as well. They stood out for me.
Hazel was another singer that I thought had something. And again, I don't like to say this, but at the time before she died, I remember saying to Hazel, you need to record, you need to record, you need to record. Breaks my heart to say it, but I was on a case to record because I said to her, you've got a voice that needs to be captured. And we were good friends. Me and Hazel used to run all the time, but I always used to say to Hazel, record something, please record something. You need to record. But she was somebody else that I found had something in her voice when she opened her mouth, connected with the Holy Spirit, and just, yeah, had that connection.
No, she's a good friend.
She couldn't abide laziness vocally.
No.
She couldn't abide that.
You had to sing. And I think what I loved and admired about Hazel was her range and what she did with her range. So she could sing any song.
Absolutely.
Anything. Oh no, that was her song.
Absolutely.
And you wonder how you're going to get there, but she got there. She hit those notes.
Yes.
She had such a deceiving range. That's what I say, a deceiving range, and she knew how to sing a song. She just,
absolutely.
And she could ad-lib her way out of the situation.
Completely, don't matter what you were singing.
You could be singing
Hazel
Three
could
Blind
ad-lib it.
Mice.
She could ad-lib it.
Hazel could ad-lib it, and you would be blessed.
You would. You'd be in tongues afterwards.
Or slain.
And the blind mice got healed.
Let me tell you, there were no blind no more. I can see.
And turn BVs for her.
Playing for Hazel was great. She did a number of things like Jamboree and a few things, and was just beginning to get out there. We did a demo, we started a demo in what was a studio down Newtown, I forgot. I can't remember the name. And I've got pictures from that day, because one thing I myself I always like to take pictures. You know, my friends would tease me and says, what, you know, haven't you got a memory? No, it's because I like to capture a memory. So I can now go back and look at pictures of, you know, Vindel, Paul Reid, myself, Hazel, when we're doing this demo in the studio. And even though my sister's gone, I have that memory. And Paul's gone, God bless him, we've got that memory. And you look back and think, yeah, a moment in time.
Hazel was such a joyful, happy, bubbly person. She could, you think we can laugh? She could laugh. I'm telling you.
Such presence.
She did. She did. But when it came to her ministry, she was serious.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, there was no playing.
Don't mess with her when it comes to the ministry.
No playing at all. Fantastic.
Most gifted singers that I worked with back in the day was Hazel Watson. Hazel had an incredible voice, incredible range. Anybody that knows or remembers Hazel knows that she was super confident, and she exuded this anointing on stage when she would sing. One of the things I remember from Hazel, she used to call herself a social butterfly, so she was very interactive. She loved to be like the center of attraction, and it was hard to miss her. But working with her when she was singing, obviously that was her forte, that big, powerful voice, her humility, her love for people, that was amazing. We did something with Reinhard Bonnke, with Lester, and what's his name? Adrian Burke, the witness. He was on the same stage as well with us. And just working with her vibrance, she's just full of life, full of character, and willing to discuss things. I remember having discussions with her at BCC, talking about makeup, talking about other bits and bobs, which was obviously taboo in the Church of God of Prophecy. And she just gave her own perspective on that. So those are the little memories I remember from college, from church. She used to sing in the choir, she sang in the worship team. She was just larger than life. I don't even know if I can add to it. She was just Hazel. And, it hit me hard when she passed away.
She definitely had a larger-than-life personality, as most of the Watsons do, to be fair. And Hazel on stage, she held the stage, she held her own, strong, powerful singer. And she was blessed in what she did as well. She sang with a conviction and belief. So it was that personality. Off stage, it was as a sibling, and I can say this as a sibling, it was a little different. Hazel, you didn't mess with. You didn't come to her with any nonsense, because she would tell you straight, about the nonsense. And you know what? There's a legendary story within the Watson, family that goes around, and unfortunately, I bear the brunt of it. But hey, you know what? I got no problem saying this. When I was younger, I had a bit of mouth, let's just say. I would speak up for myself, because you can imagine in a family like that, you gotta So I would argue and shout and argue with my older siblings and whatever. And one day I decided to get right up in Hazel's face, giving it, just going at her. I was annoying, and I accept that. And next thing I know, I'm dusting myself off because Hazel took a swing at me with, and if my brother's married, he's watching this particular, he will just die of laughter because we always say that it was just like an awkward left-handed punch. Following that exchange, let's just say I never messed with Hazel again. You know, yeah, I knew my place. So, you know what? Butcher's a great sister, great loving sister. And she was a people person as well. Definitely a people person. And I know she's touched a lot of lives, both on stage as a singer, but also off stage in her daily work as well, what she did, so.
Yeah, so I heard her sing, and I remember her, I think she sang a couple of songs, but the one song I do remember her singing was Celebrate New Life by BB and CC Winans. And she completely kind of just tore it up.
I'd say Hazel Watson always tore up whenever she got the mic. She never messed about. I remember her, she had a solo set that she would do with Sharon Brown and Dee Loise and Paul Green doing her BVs. And she, I don't know if it was Central Hall, she was at Central Hall, and I think she could have been like the warm-up for some big artists like Timothy Wright, or something was going on. She might as well just have been the main act as far as I was concerned. She was phenomenal, and the BVs were tight.
I met a wonderful lady through, again, my friend Paul, Hazel Watson. She was a big name in Church of God of Prophecy here in Birmingham. And when you heard Hazel's voice, everyone was instantly mesmerized. She had a powerful, big voice, like, you know, the old singers from back in the day. And Hazel was a young woman with a big voice beyond her years. And when Hazel opened up her mouth, again, the ministry of song that she would deliver, her voice was the instrument. And for me, the great singers don't need any instrumentation. That just complements their first instrument. So when Hazel would sing, and I remember hearing Hazel sing on the street or in church, her voice just carried what we call an anointing with it, that it affected me. And at that time when I met Hazel, I was still very much new to where gospel music was going. There was hymnal church music, but then there was the gospel music scene. And when Hazel opened up her mouth, she captivated me, she arrested me, and I literally felt held, frozen in time for the duration of whatever she was singing, whether it was a few seconds or a few minutes. Hazel Watson, though she's no longer here with us, she will never be forgotten.
Frankie was the one. Anything you wanted to know, people you wanted to meet. He interviewed Frank had his show, the Frank Stewart Gospel Show, and he had some really interesting people he interviewed some very interesting people, and he would get the most off the chart people to interview, and he always got them. They would always, yeah, for you, I'll do it. So that was great. So I was able to meet so many people because of the late Jesse Jackson. I don't know if Jesse Jackson. We were able to sing with him at one point. What's his name? Little Richard. Like I said, what's her name? Hawkins, Edwin Hawkins, and Tremaine. Yeah, lots of different people Frank met, and he also helped a lot of young artists. He gave them a platform on his show. He would invite them, he would interview them, he would allow them to sing on his show. So there were a lot of people. He was able to help a lot of people. And he's greatly missed. I miss him all the time. It was great being a younger sister because he would take me to all these concerts that he used to have. I'd be holding the microphone, as you said, and that the tape recorder, and we'd be meeting so many people. Yeah, those were good days. Those were good days. He used to travel around to many of the churches and interview people at the churches, or have them come and be on the show, on the program. Say, for instance, if your church was having an event, he'd have you come on WM and advertise, talk about your thing, so that you'd get, some advertisements, pop some in there. So yeah, there was all of that. Oscar has always been a man that's, his heart is with young people, helping young people to develop their qualities, whether be it educational or any other way, any way that he could. He was just that type of person, that type of man. In your career, he would help you find, the right path, steer you on the right path, how to get on, how to move on. Young people would bring he would encourage them to go to university, and if they had dissertations to do, he would read through, he would, steer them in the right path. He had a passion for music, as we were a musical family. And in Handsworth, we had loads of young people. And our church has been blessed with a lot of talented young people, musically talented. So one day he said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try auditions. It was in the very early 80s. Was it 1980? Late 90s? Late 70s, sorry. Must have been perhaps 79. And then he had the young people come and try out for the chorale, for the choir at the time. It didn't even have a name. Just, groups of young people singing. And he got them interested, and he formed them into a choir, and the Handsworth chorale, Handsworth Church Chorale, was born. And he took them to Germany and Holland. He took them to the Caribbean, and they sang. And it was such a, if you speak to any founder member of the chorale now, you will see that they all are still very much bonded. And that was a beautiful thing. To this day, they're still, when Oscar passed away 2 years ago, nearly 3 years now, and they came together and they sang. The originals came, as well as new ones came, and sang at his funeral. That was so moving. He would have been so proud. But it was so well deserved. He was a wonderful man, a wonderful big brother, wonderful educator, wonderful man, God-fearing man, wonderful person. Yeah.
Sharon became a major influence for me, but grew up with Sharon from Mansfield Road days. So if anybody in prophecy going back in the day, Mansfield Road Choir was always there doing their own thing. Sharon was, when I was around them, was choir director, and she wasn't really into choir wars. She would do her own thing. She said, no, we're not running no competition with nobody. We're just going to come and do it. And I have to say, Mansfield Road were slick. They had a slick style. And then the advantage they had is the musicians, because the majority of their musicians were session musicians. Paul, Reid, Joe, Ross, Julian on the drums, so they were, music was down. So they would always perform. So yes, me and Sharon go back way back, yeah. And then unfortunately Sharon passed. But growing up with Sharon, I remember Sharon, what hit me first
was we were there one year, we must have been about 15, 16, and Mansfield Road were having a concert, so we were like practicing every day. And I used to go, summer holidays, I used to go down all the time. And I remember she was going to sing a song at the concert from Tremaine Hawkins, Lord, I Tried. And I remember her singing it in rehearsal for the first time. And I just said, oh my Lord. And then when she sang it at the concert, only those who were there will remember. But I mean, it just tore the place to pieces. I mean, it was just something else, you know. It just grabbed you, and how she, you know, delivered it as well. It was just awesome. That's how I can describe it.
I was invited to church God of Prophecy by Paul. Went to Mansfield Road, which is a very famous church in Birmingham in the prophecy world. And from there, I kind of made links with other musicians in the church. And Church God of Prophecy was very much known for guitarists and not so much keyboard players. So I kind of developed my skills as a keyboard player in Church God of Prophecy, working with some great guys. Joseph Ross, Paul Reid, Paul Ross, Julian Chambers. At the time, Julian was very, very young then, and we kind of put him through his paces when he was younger. So yeah, and he's developed into a great drummer on the circuit now.
Paul for me, right, is one of my favourite guitarists. Not just because he's a great guitarist, but as a person, genuine person, down to earth. What you see is what you get. And the thing about it, right, being on stage was great with Paul as well. I got, you know, we could communicate. He could communicate with his smile. He had this cheeky smile. You know, if he did something well, he'd turn around and give his approval with his cheeky smile and stuff like that. And his ability to, being a keyboard player, his music intelligence was very, very good as well. Paul knew how to work around a keyboard player. That is so fundamental for me as a keyboard player, that the guitarist has got to know what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And Paul was just phenomenal, great in those areas. You know, and like I said, the journey where we started when I was in our 20s, and the rehearsals, and knowing the struggle that we had to go to in terms of having the finances to get to rehearsals, you know what I mean? The journey, and Paul's never changed. You know, the same Paul I knew 20 years ago is the same Paul that I knew and up prior to him passing. And it doesn't matter where I was, Paul will come up and greet me. You know, Wayne, how are you doing? Whereas some people, you know, the fame gets to their head and they're not the same person. But Paul was a genuine guy. He loved what he did. He loved people, and he loved to share his knowledge. You know what I mean? So yeah, greatly admired.
I've said this in another interview actually. I felt like I was Jesus, and the reason why I say I felt like I was Jesus is because I had two guys that helped me, influenced me, and motivated me. One was called Peter, one was called Paul. One was Peter Cunningham, and the other one was Paul Reid. So I got Peter and Paul. Do you get the joke? I feel like Jesus with two disciples. Anyway, I meet Paul at 11. He comes round my house. This is a guy who played drums. He came to my house and he says, I'm playing guitar. I'm thinking of playing guitar. And I know there's a lot of people that make claim that they taught Paul to play guitar. But I'm telling you, yeah, and I'm putting it out there, and if anyone can rebuttal me, please do. Give me dates and times and rebuttal me. It was me that showed Paul to play guitar in my house, 41 Reservoir Road, when he had his Ibanez blade, which he only got because Vincent McCalla had a blade, playing for Aberdeen Street. Yeah, it was me that taught Paul.
I continued to work with John Campbell, who ran UK Fusion. He was doing his solo career at the time. I think he was signed to Pete Waterman's label. And I was playing on his singles. And John used to say to me, have you got a guitarist? So I introduced him to Paul Reid. And then Paul Reid used to do a lot of sessions, and then me and Paul would do stuff at Subterranea and other venues like that, and we would just session for him. It would be me, Chris Bailey on drums, Howard Francis, Paul Reid, and we do, you know, a few big gigs around. And even like if you needed a guitarist, Paul Reid would be there doing all the sessions, all the TV stuff.
I would have to take Paul back home in my car, and because when he was very, you know, we're working at a time, me and Paul used to laugh about this because he used to give me £2 to take him back to Birmingham. £2. I had £2 as well, so we had to make £4. So my £2 get me from my house to the rehearsal to bring back to my dad. So he's got petrol in his car, and then Paul used to give me £2. So anyway, it was £4, £5 every Monday and Friday. So Paul jumped in the car, and we drive about 40 miles an hour in the motorway. Took him back to West Brom, come back home, make sure the cars had petrol in it for my dad to use the next morning. And we did that for Monday and Friday. And then, you know, like I said, that was, and Saturday, I think it was about, I think I still got my diary, I think it was around about 1986 or 1988, I think it may have been, maybe a little bit later. I think we did over 40 concerts that year around the country, from Manchester, Mansfield, London, Brighton, Birmingham, Wolverhampton. We was constantly gigging.
Genius of a guy. We used to ring each other. He used to say, I'm playing for the best. Yeah, like who? At the time, we were playing for Jackie Graham. Yeah, we got the best. I'm playing for the best black singer. And then it was, no, Paul, it's me. I got Ruby Turner, man. I got Ruby Turner. He goes, no, Carl. It's me. I got Beverly Knight. Oh, no. Then I said, no, Paul. I got Misha. And we were just like that all the time. We would just be challenging one another and who we play for. And that's how we live, man. And I miss him to this day because I don't have that guy that I can call that understood, because he was the only boy and I was the only boy, and our dads were both ministers that went from big churches to small churches. We both could concur with that. So we had a lot in common. Our dads had a lot in common. They shared a lot in common. But yeah, Paul, what he came out and what he emerged to be was just phenomenal. And played with him on many occasions. We toured the world together. It's been a privilege to know the guy, tour with the guy, be on the road with the guy. To see his progression as a musician, unbelievable, in church, out of church. And to know I hung with this guy. We played with Freddie Kofi, Shauna Scoffrey, Junior Giscombe, Sounds of Blackness. So many things we done together. Travelled up and down the country, you know.
Paul Reid actually called me at one time out of the blue for Beverly Knight and was like, look, I know you can do it. It's pressure, but please, could you help me out? Like, and there was no rehearsal, literally no rehearsal. He just sent me the songs and says, but it's a festival, it's a big festival as well. So I was like, oh my gosh, but you know what, it's really, I'm gonna do this. And I learned the songs, I was actually listening to it on the way there. He picked me up, was driving down to the gig, and I listened to the songs, actually planning it out in my head, thinking, okay, that's the part there, and trying to remember all the parts, but the gig went well, and that was a good relationship that I built with Reid.
Lester Davis, he was a peer of mine. He was a part originally of the New Testament Church of God. He played guitar since he was very, very young. His mom has told me that, she shared that. I still speak to her on a weekly basis. And so he's loved guitar. We started playing together at Aston Manor School in the 70s, did assemblies together, we had a band together. And then after we left school in around 78, we went our separate ways, and I didn't see him again till in the early 80s, by which time he had become a 12-tribe Rastaman, dreadlocks down his back and all the rest of it. And I used to see him on the bus. He was playing for a band called the Cushites, playing reggae music and rock music and stuff with his cousins. And so I got to know him, very humble musician. One of his nicknames was Prof or Professor because he was very creative. Loved different ideas and different sound effects and different perspectives on music. Took his guitar to the next level. He used to teach down at Yardley's in Birmingham City Centre. And so developing our musicianship together was heartfelt. His first album, For Me to Live, we actually recorded on my, when I say my, it was yes it was, I did buy it. I bought it off the project I used to work with, a Fostex Porter Studio 4-track. It was a cassette and it would run all in one direction. And I used to have an Alesis SR16 and a Dr. Rhythm 660, and I'd program all the drums, and then we just developed the whole of, pretty much the whole of that album on a 4-track Porter Studio, which he then translated to a chap who just saw him yesterday actually, Steve Clark of Goldmine Studios. He then developed did the whole recording, and that was when Leicester just really took off. And we were doing all sorts of stuff. I was asked by Roger here to do that gospel event over in Bethel with Leicester and Novel, what's his surname? Pianist. Novel Smith, Bonnie Dryden on drums, and Leicester and myself. And that was just one amazing experience. And so we continued to do work here and there. We did the Well and blah, 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 till eventually Leicester went to, he emigrated to Australia, where his ministry carried on. He built his studio there, his home, and then sadly in 2019, he passed away from cancer. But he left an amazing legacy with me and so many other musicians that he had impacted for good.
Ephraim came from a singing family. His dad used to play guitar.
Yeah.
Jabez Lewis used to play guitar. He used to sing with his siblings in our church in Wolverhampton.
They went to the Wolverhampton branch of our church, yeah? They were like a prodigy. Their eldest brother, Derek Lewis, there was 5 brothers, so they were like the Jackson 5, you know what I'm saying? But they were Lewis, they were a very talented family. All of them could sing. There was 5 boys and 3 girls, or 2 girls, if I remember rightly. And Ephraim was the singer. You know, he was a little, imagine Michael Jackson singing, you know, little boy with him little squeaky. That was them all over.
And when they decided to come over to Handsworth, you heard how we reluctantly took him on to be part of Heavenly Seekers.
But to be fair,
some description.
Ephraim was always putting himself out there, and I think that's what we kind of didn't like, because he was, you know, if there was a song singing, he'd get in there and he'd be doing the lead.
Somehow. Yeah, so even with Heavenly Seekers, Ephraim and Donessa were the main leads. Yes, you were. They were the main leads. They were more confident, you see, and obviously if they're going to be confident in leading, then why not? So, but with Ephraim, I think with the devastation of his mom's passing, and at the time, we hadn't experienced loss like that as young people. He's one of the first that we, you know, friends, more than friends, because he was like a brother to us, more or less. So I think we realised that when, again, his brother died, soon afterwards, I think we realised that we were losing this family member. And when he signed up to Electra, or even before Electra, and went to work in Stoke, he did talk about the fact that he couldn't get out of what he committed himself to in the music industry.
And you could tell that Ephraim would make it, and he did make it. You know, went to America. Well, actually, he signed up with a guy who was, Bitty McLean was signed up with. Yeah, so I knew his manager, Mick Cater, and David Harper. They managed UB40. You know what I'm saying? I used to see them because Mick Cater used to manage Bitty McLean as well. But obviously Ephraim Lewis was away afterwards. But he signed up with, I forget the label now. And he was due to do some big things. He sang the film Made in America with Will Smith and Whoopi Goldberg. Actually, Ephraim sang the theme song to that with a woman named Laura Sutterfield, song called I Know I Don't Walk on Water. Listen to that song, man, and you'll hear, he's got a great voice. he was destined. He was destined. And then I'll go as far as to say he was actually murdered by cops in LA.
But by that time it was too late. And tragically, we know, what was reported in the papers about him signing a deal with Elektra and going over to LA and getting the album done. On the completion of the album, I believe, tragically, at a celebration party or what have you, he fell to his death through one reason or another. How that happened.
He was tasered. There was something happening in the place. And racism, again, the police came and, it's got to be, and he wasn't doing nothing. You know what I mean? And struggled. And obviously they tasered him, and he actually died while, I can't even remember what's gone, they were on there. I remember his brother Lewis was telling my mum, but there was more than 5. And one of them can stun an elephant. There was actually burnt on him so that they were holding it down on him. And then when he was unconscious, and when they found out he was dead, they threw him out the window to cover it up, to say that he jumped. Now, it was only one story, It was only on one story. So if you were on one story, you wouldn't die, and you'd break your fall. If you jump out of a window, one story. Imagine you're in your house. One story is the first floor. They threw him out, and because the amount of bones, he just landed like a heap. So that was tragic. But yeah, I remember, and I remember, I came off tour again, and I went to see my mum. As just me and her in the house. She had a phone call and went upstairs. And I remember I was watching MTV at the time, and a UB40 song came on, the one about I Can't Help Falling In. No, the one on the train. I've got the bottle, bring me a cup, pass the... And Ephraim is in the video. Ephraim, because he did BVs on the album, because of the connection with Mick Cater and David Harper managing him, he was on the video, the one on the train. And I remember I heard my mum kind of, what? So I kind of turned it down and kind of just went out and had a listen. She said, what are you saying to me? Lewis, Ephraim is dead? And then I kind of ran upstairs and said, what? And I says, no, I just seen him on the TV. I'll never ever forget it, I'll never forget it. I just seen him, he was on the video. I just watched him. So that was tragic, man.
He'd made a wrong choice. But do you remember that Friday when he came to church to tell us that, but he'd already signed it. Yeah. He'd already signed the deal. And when he came to tell us, it was almost like, I'm not sure this is for me.
Yeah. But even though he jumped from house to house, literally, just to try and avoid, but he knew that once he'd signed, that was it.
But he's a lost legacy because he was just a phenomenal
ahead of his time.
He was.
He was ahead of his time.